Hello, and welcome to episode one of What's Stopping You. Joining me is my co-host Shai Schechter and Drew Bredvick. Drew works at Vercel. I don't know exactly what you do. I think it's something product sales or something.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's sales engineering. It's an interesting role not a lot of people know about, but
Sales engineering.
sales plus being a developer.
Our goal for this episode is to help you. We're going to try to help you through a problem that you're currently stuck on. If we can help you through this problem, we have been successful. What is the can you tell us a little bit of a background of the project that you're working on, and then we'll get into the specific place where you're stuck and talk about how we might be able to help you.
Yeah, so I'm working on a project called registered.dev, and I started this project after seeing quite a few problems in the sales engineering space. So, what is sales engineering, right? We should probably start there because most developers have no clue what sales engineering is. Um, Sales engineering is pretty much just the going back and forth of figuring out in a sales process, being the technical resource for both the company. So I work at Vercel, and companies that might be considering using Vercel. So I'm the like go-to technical person when you're um, evaluating if Vercel is a good fit for you or not. And that is a field where it's great to know a lot of business, like what business value is Vercel going to be adding to these people's day jobs, but also, what technical blockers, when you're migrating from Next hosted in a Kubernetes cluster to Next on Vercel, what are the common gotchas? How can I help you get up and running? And I transitioned to this role almost 2 years ago, and it's kind of a bit of a jump from just a traditional engineering role, right? It's a lot more customer facing, involves sales. I work hand in hand with an account executive, pretty much just the person selling Vercel, and so it's slightly less technical than a traditional standard engineering job, right? Um, but one of the pros is you get to see the inside of a business and like how it works. Um, Registered.dev is born out of seeing all of these problems that exist in the process of buying software, but skewed specifically towards technical products. So I don't want to build a sales tool that helps. If you're just selling some random SaaS on the internet, this tool isn't going to be built for you. It's more built for dev tool companies specifically, because there's some things that are a little bit different in a sales process for a company like Vercel than, I don't know, just some standard SaaS.
Okay, it's a Salesforce for dev tool companies, something where there's there's more of a technical aspect to the sales cycle. It's not just emails back and forth. There's some other technical thing that's happening that needs to be kept track of.
Yeah, like Salesforce has no concept of what a GitHub repository is, right?
Mm.
Like that's just something that is entirely missing in that space. And there's quite a bit of manual work. Some things that could be automated, some things that could be shared across um, deals, because if you're doing a bunch of bespoke work for one deal, it's kind of the same concept of, try, do not repeat yourself. You kind of want to reuse those assets across deals so that you're not doing a bunch of bespoke work every single time
Mm.
to close a deal.
Why is this important for you to work on? You're enjoying your job at
Yeah.
Vercel. You're sounds like making a lot of money. Is this something to help you make your job easier to be able to automate and scale? How are you thinking about this?
Yeah, so the problems I've seen, well, I guess to start, I've always been someone who like tinkers and builds projects on the side. Even before I worked at Vercel, the other, I think 2 years ago, I did a retro on how many projects I had started and maybe shut down or failed or killed or something like that. And
Hmm.
it was at least 12 that had gone like full through the full cycle of idea to domain to actually having code and actually having a working project. If you count the graveyard of domains that I have that have never seen the light of day, they just kind of sit in my Google domains. That's even higher. So I'm always kind of thinking about what I want to build and things like that, and I'll always do that regardless of where I work.
Hmm.
Um, but joining sales engineering has been very eye-opening in terms of products or spaces that are underserved. So part of it is, yes, these are all things that could be made a lot better at Vercel's during Vercel's like sales process. But I think the thing that happens at a lot of these companies is you solve it at your current company and no one pulls back and generalizes the solution. Like we're working on making all of these things better at Vercel right now
Hmm.
ourselves by just kind of making a new Word doc and creating a new format and all of these different things. But that does fix the problem at Vercel to an extent.
Hmm.
But I just saw a really good opportunity to kind of take the generalizations learned or take the learnings from kind of these fixes that we're applying at Vercel and generalizing them a little more.
Okay, I see that. I see the benefit to society that you can take these SOPs that you're developing at Vercel and bring this to the world. I think what I'm more curious about is like individually, what is this doing for you? Is this a compulsion to start new projects, which
Yeah.
Shai and I both share? Is this that you would like to be moving into SaaS? How would this change your life if
Yeah.
this became a product?
So part compulsion, right? I will always start projects, but also have always kind of dreamed of someday running my own SaaS full time and things like that. All of that to be said, like I love my job at Vercel. I'm not leaving anytime soon. But I think if you were to, sitting back and the new year coming up, right? Good time to reflect and think, what do I want to be doing in 10 years?
Mm.
Well, in 10 years, I would like to be running my own profitable SaaS and kind of with a small team. In kind of in that vein, I want to be doing things that make progress in that direction.
Okay, that tracks. Shai, anything here before we move to specific problems?
The main thing I'm curious to know is, so it sounds like you're building something that would benefit you in the day job right now, and will benefit your team. What, like, how much have you done to identify who else it would help? Like, are there other examples that you could pinpoint? Like, here are a dozen companies, people in companies even, that I know immediately, like, this would help them as well? Or are you coming from, I know this would help me, I haven't spoken to other people who it might help you? Like, where are you at with that?
Yeah, so I've done a couple things here. One is I've found competitors that already exist, and so have kind of validated that, and some of them have raised funding, some of them are a little bigger and more established, some of them are newer, and in the space, so I've kind of done that validation in the sense of, I think there is a market here. And with those tools, essentially I'm kind of just niching down a little bit. So if you're taking the top down approach of like, is there a market for this? I think I've kind of justified that. For the specific functionality and differentiators, I do have quite a few relationships with folks at various dev tool companies. And if you are one of those people actually and you're interested in sales tooling, and you work at a dev tool company, my DMs are open on Twitter. Please slide into them. But the approach I'm going to be taking there is I want to get something kind of demoable first, kind of that feels real, and then I'm going to take it to a bunch of those folks. It's also kind of I was previously using the excuse of like, hey, it's the holidays, nobody wants to hop on a call over the holidays.
I'm
but
currently using that excuse.
That excuse is kind of running to its end here shortly.
I wanna dig more into that. So you've got the holiday excuse, fine. I would push back more on that if this were the beginning of the holidays, but that excuse is running out anyway, so I don't need to push back. But the other one of I'm curious why you want to move the product further and how much further you want to move the product before you bring this to those peers that you have in the industry.
Yeah, the way I'm thinking about it is it needs to be real enough because what I'm kind of going to go for is like, if I build this, will you commit to buying it? And so I'm looking for kind of a strong verbal commitment, and that's one thing to do like customer. I think there's two buckets. There's kind of the customer research bucket, and then there's the kind of like pre-selling bucket. In the customer research bucket, I've kind of been rather thorough about examining our sales process at Vercel, asking some of my peers at Vercel for feedback. And then my boss, Ben Seymour, he's also on Twitter, has been doing sales engineering for a very long time. And I'm going to be getting some feedback from him as soon as I have something kind of tangible as well. So I think between getting quite a bit of feedback from people internally, and then I guess what I'm saying here is my goal is kind of to have something a little more real before I do too many interviews, because I know the problem really well. Like I've probably, how many deals do I think I've been on at Vercel? I don't think I can probably share that number. I think from the sense of like building the like scratching my own itch thing, I think is at least going to solve the problems for a company like Vercel. And I think a company like Vercel is my perfect target customer, if that makes sense.
Okay, so it sounds like you're saying that because this is a product, because you're essentially building this product for you as well as for others, like you think you've got a good sense of what needs to be built.
Yeah.
You could take that demo, you could take the building process a little bit further before you need to get too much research from external sources. Yeah,
because if it was a niche that I didn't know a lot about, or a niche that didn't have clearly defined competitors already, I think I'm using those two things to kind of justify not spending a week doing customer calls. And then my hope is to kind of have something real when I do those customer calls so that the feedback means more, if that makes sense. Okay. Because if I show you a demo and you've got feedback, I think your feedback's going to be much more actionable than if I just talk about something in the abstract.
Okay. And how do you feel about the idea of those customer calls when they come? Is that something that like really excites you? Is that something you're kind of putting off?
I would say I'm putting it off in the nature only of like I've done plenty of calls. I probably actually, can Cron tell me how many meetings I had last year? It's probably in the thousands. So I'm not putting off the fact of like I'm happy to hop on a call and talk to people, but the act of like going to your network and saying, hey, I'm working on this thing, please give me feedback on it, that's the thing I'm putting off, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah. And so with that in mind, that's why I want to get a good sense of like the justifications you gave for why you're not bringing this to other people yet. They sound kind of they're convincing, but given what you've said about your feelings about that next step, I am curious to dig into whether they are true.
Yes, I think we've arrived at. My wife says I can convince myself of anything, and I think she's probably right. So, this you've probably picked a rough first guest in terms of, are these things true or not? Um, in my mind, they are. So I guess, you know, I think I think I can probably, the reason I'm letting myself not do the customer calls is because I think I can probably get to a good enough outcome with with just skipping this step. Now, if I was giving this advice to somebody else, would I say, "Hey, skip this step"? Probably not. Um, Even if you do know the domain really, really well, right? Because it starts these relationships, then it can be easier to do the pre-sale thing later. Um, and then they're warm instead of, I don't know, like mildly warm, like lukewarm. They'll actually be like kind of warm or hot. So yes, I agree with you. There's a plenty of good reasons to go do this, and I probably should.
Okay. This is cool. So, so there's no, but like this is good, right? This is
Yeah, we're getting to the bottom of my psychology, I guess.
yeah.
I
Are
have
you
a-
feeling a little bit uncomfortable right now? I
Yeah,
hope you
that's
are.
perfect. A little bit
That's good.
uncomfortable is
That's
perfect.
good. We'll ride that edge.
No, and like, look, the thing is, there's a spectrum, right? On the one hand, you could like sit and build this completely in the dark for years, with no landing page, no communication with the outside world, NDAs with anyone you tell. Like, I've
Yeah.
been there before many years ago. Like that's one end, that's one extreme, and then on the other extreme, you could decide to go out and do these calls before you've built anything, thought about anything, and the perfect spot. There isn't one perfect spot, and it's not a clear black and white. And so one of the questions is like, if you could do this building stage, if you could throw a demo together very quickly, and then take that to your peers, to the market for feedback, then yeah, fine. And even if you are doing it as an avoidance tactic, if the downside isn't much, like,
Right.
then whatever, like run
Yeah,
with it.
I
Like,
think
lean
that's
into
kind
your
of where
lean
I've
into your
landed.
weaknesses. It's fine. So I guess the question is, how long will this actually take to get to that point?
Yeah.
If it would take a long time, then it might be worth digging more into like, let's question this.
That's a really good
so-
question. So I've been making, to kind of talk about the estimation of what I've got to build. A little bit of a plug for my day job here. Vercel, Next.js, the starter kit, platform starter kit that Stephen Tay made. I'm kind of using all of the things that I regularly learn about at my day job. So it kind of speeds things up quite a bit. I'm actually moving rather fast on development of this, like what I have as an ideal state for kind of a rough MVP. The things that will take longer, so there's the platform, then I probably need to integrate with some different CRMs, one being Salesforce, even though that's the tool I'm kind of despising in my landing page copy. I probably do need to integrate with them, maybe HubSpot. For which CRMs to integrate, I definitely want that to be a customer-led, like what are customers saying they want me to integrate with. So that's something where I do a bunch of user research and not really build it before getting that validated. Those pieces are going to probably take a little longer, though. I think, like, because put simply, my app is a big CRUD app, right? Like, it's just a bunch of simple logic mostly. It needs to send a couple emails. It needs to enforce state in a couple of weird spots, but like, it's mostly a CRUD app. I can build that rather quickly. The like crazy syncing engine back and forth with Salesforce and complying with their crazy API requirements and then getting in their marketplace and all those other things, like that's going to be a beast. So my thought was build the MVP for the first thing and kind of get feedback on that before I build the crazy Salesforce syncing stuff.
Okay. And how far through that are you? How much, like, if you think about what that MVP needs to have in your mind, how much of that have you done? How much is still to do? How long does that take?
Let me look at my whiteboard for 1 second.
He's got a whiteboard. That's a good sign.
Whiteboard's a good sign. It's a green flag.
It's in fact it's all you need for a successful.
Oh, you have a
Yes.
whiteboard. We don't need to be doing this
No,
call.
we're good. We're good.
Just look at the whiteboard.
Okay, so there's probably a bunch of styling things I need to fix, but 2 main pieces of functionality out of 10 remain. So I've kind
Okay.
of done decent there. That doesn't include anything with the Salesforce syncing, though. I haven't even touched that bucket of stuff yet.
The
Which is
reason
probably... Oh, go ahead.
the reason I'm pushing so far down this line is because in my own experience and the experience of everyone I've ever seen deal with things like this, there will, like, once you bring it to those people, you will learn that there are things that they want that are very different than you envisaged, even if you're building something for yourself.
Yeah.
And so the further you go down the building line, the more challenging that becomes.
That's very fair. I think that means, like, what are those core assumptions that break, right?
And I'm not sure you can even guess. And that's the thing. Like, I have tried very hard in these things in the past to like try and guess them beforehand. And even to the point of like, I've done that thing of, okay, I know that this is not ready. I know that I know that everyone is going to get to this point and get stuck. But I'm just going to do it anyway on a call with them, and I'll watch them get stuck, and then we'll figure it out from there. And they all blast straight through that point without any difficulty. And I'm like, oh, they did not get stuck on the point where I knew they would. And then they get stuck on some other point that I was totally convinced would be like super intuitive for them. So and maybe that's just me. Maybe you are better at estimating these things than I am. I've never seen it. Like, it doesn't
just
I've
work.
never seen it happen that
I
way.
agree with that. I think the takeaway there then is I probably shouldn't spend too much time on any like UI polish or anything like that. I should just get the core functionality working and kind of get it in front of people as quickly as possible in that sense. So that I can do these like, hey, let's get you an account and try this out and see how it's working for you and things like that. And get like actual product feedback earlier rather than kind of spending time on the polish.
That sounds like it could be a reasonable approach. How do you feel about that?
It feels pretty good. I think the demo thing that I was hoping to do though was pretty much even before I would be at that state.
Okay.
So I think I'm still going to stick with the demo thing of like, if I can, because to get to a demo state, right, like I don't need to have payments working. I don't need to have like a million things working.
Mm-hmm.
You can do a demo of, like, here is an account that already is populated with data. So you can just like skip all these other CRUD places to build because you've just manually inserted things in the database. And so I think that approach is what probably gets me feedback the quickest. I'm not sure though. Like,
What are you not
is
sure
there a
about?
difference between feedback from me demoing something versus feedback from, me giving you an account and you signing into it, right? Like those... It's easy to watch me drive through something when I know where I'm going. Like a very weird comparison here, but like I had a friend growing up who lived in the country as a kid, and I'm pretty sure he could drive that with no headlights, just going home because he knows the road. Is that a good idea? No, but he probably could. I would turn my brights on, like I drove to his house many times, but I need the brights. And somebody else driving through my site probably... It's different to like sit in passenger and watch that person drive versus driving yourself.
Okay, so which of those is going to be most useful? Like, does it make sense to get to the quickest possible point where you can demo it to them and then do that, or and like
yeah.
you won't? Yeah, you're right. It's not the same kind of feedback as when they're using it, but I guess the fundamental question is, what do you want to get from these people
Yeah,
by
that's
doing
what I
this?
was. I guess it's like my gut instinct says like, am I solving a problem your business would pay for? Is what I want an answer to.
Okay.
Um, Not like, is my UX well designed? Because I
Okay.
don't really like, to all the UX people out there. I do care about UX. I'm not, but at the MVP state, it's not as important to me.
Learning if you're solving a problem that a business would pay for is something that you could do with no product if you're just describing what the product is. And something I think that the thing that I'm most interested in pushing on is like there are lots of reasons for doing interviews at one stage or another, what the advantages are. But the thing that I find myself most curious about is that there seems to be emotional resistance for the way that you phrased it is pleading for feedback. It feels like there's something there that you may be intellectualizing a reason for not talking to more people up front. That maybe it's like a fear of rejection that you're going to show someone this after you've thought it's a really cool idea, and when you ask someone if they would actually pay for it, the answer might be no.
Yeah,
And that would suck. That'd be painful. And so the longer you can push that down the line, the safer it's going to be. That's a place that
that's
I've been
fair.
stuck in for a lot of projects where, yeah.
Okay. So maybe my so I've identified 12 target customers.
Okay.
I think I was mostly putting off talking to them via the reasoning that early on Google's founders said it's better if people find out about Google later because we don't want you to use it today because tomorrow it will be a better product. And so your first interaction with the product will be better. I think I'm probably using that justification to say like, look, I want these 12 target customers here. These are like my only good leads that I know have a high chance of closing. So I don't want to waste them. Now, if you can correct my thinking here, in the sense of like maybe bringing them into building the product and letting them see it at an earlier phase is better.
Are there only 12 customers for this thing
No,
in the world?
there are quite a few more.
Okay.
The dev tool market, according to Crunchbase, is 3,768 companies, and it's compounding annually at 14.6%.
So let's say you hop on a call with each of these 12 people and you just completely embarrass yourself. You insult them, they end the call and they hate you. They're like, this Drew guy, he's terrible. How might you find out of those 1,000 people, how might you get 12 more of them on the phone?
I would probably just look through Vercel's Slack Connect and see who else I could find that I have a good connection with, and kind of go add them on LinkedIn and go message them of like, hey, you're in a similar space we're in, right? Companies. Vercel has a very extensive Slack Connect setup. I think every dev tool company I've ever heard of has a channel with us. And so kind of just figuring which companies fit into that bucket of like ones that are obviously in the dev tool space and are probably a little younger. I think it's probably easier to sell to a dev tool company who is a year or two old versus Microsoft. So definitely biasing earlier in the life cycle. But all of that to say, yes, I think I could find 12 more companies that are on this list.
Okay. How does that feel? Is that hopping on the Slack Connect and finding new ones? Is that a
it feels it feels like it's okay. I probably just need to go have these conversations anyway. Finding the correct people shouldn't be too hard because I picked these companies because I have good connections there. So finding the right people to actually go talk to shouldn't be a big deal. And then, 30 minutes on my calendar is not a big deal either. So, all of that to say, there's not that great of a reason that I haven't had those calls, Christian.
okay?
I do wonder though if there's this concept of like I guess in my mind I'm viewing these sales opportunities the same way I view Vercel sales opportunities,
Hmm.
where say something goes wrong in a conversation, deal goes bad or whatever, the people kind of just disappear, and then they never talk to me again.
Hmm.
That is not going to be necessarily true for these early feedback customers that I'm talking about here, right? Like these are friends that I have that work at other companies. They're not just going to disappear if the tool isn't a good fit for them.
Right.
So I guess I'm falsely conflating these two things.
And this is the core thing that we'd like to help you on. Like, you don't, you have no obligation to justify to us why you're taking an action or not.
Oh yeah, this is the best way my brain works anyway. Is like just talking through things out loud. So it's quite annoying to all the people around me, but at a podcast setting, it works pretty well, I guess.
Sure. That's insightful. Also, that the making a bad impression, having a customer call go bad in the context of your day job at Vercel, has a very real consequence, and those people just disappear and you don't see them again. So it makes sense to me that you might be framing the conversations that you would have with people about registered.dev in the same sort of context, that you really need to make a good first impression. You got to nail it on the first try, and if not, they're just going to disappear and you're never going to see them again. So I think the thing I'm most curious of at this point is digging for other resistance in that spot, particularly the way you phrased it, pleading for feedback. Tell me more about that. What because that does sound bad. I don't want to plead someone for feedback.
That does sound bad.
Yeah, how are you framing that sort of conversation?
You know, I'm not sure why the phrase "pleading for feedback" came out, but you're probably onto something there. People have busy calendars; they owe me nothing. Asking for 30 minutes for feedback on a product that's not real yet. Also, kind of feels like, you know, maybe they're taking this call because, you know, Drew works at Vercel and would be nice if Vercel promoted our tweet or whatever, you know, like I'm cautious. I don't want to be dipping into any buckets of goodwill that aren't necessarily mine to dip into, if that makes sense. Like I'm kind of cautious about the Vercel affiliation piece of it, if that makes sense, because obviously this is not a Vercel product. This is my product. It's hosted on Vercel and uses a lot of Vercel open source, but which is kind of like, there's a lot of overlap here between my day job and this side project space. So I guess I'm just cautious to, like, those relationships, I'm kind of being extra cautious and guarded with, if that makes sense. So maybe it'd be better if I just picked random companies. I think I would feel better if these companies didn't have a Slack connect with Vercel and I had never even heard of Vercel or don't even use it in any way. That would almost make me feel better.
That's interesting that would feel better. I could see that also increasing your feelings of abundance of this audience if you know that there's a channel in a way that you can just tap into this unlimited bucket of these thousands of companies and get them on the phone. Whatever that method is of getting them on a call can then become part of your sales pipeline.
Okay, so we've decided, it kind of feels like that is the easiest switch, is just switching from companies that have very tight, close relationships with Vercel to ones that have no relationship to Vercel, at least for customer feedback. I think it's also a good way for me to, something Stripe did that was pretty impressive early on was they intentionally set their fees higher than their competition. And it's because it made them build a more useful product. You know, you're not going to pay higher fees if your product isn't great. I think if I go after customers that have a lower propensity to say yes to me, I might build a better product. You know, if I go directly to someone who might just buy it out of like having a good relationship with me, that feels like a less solid data point.
It does seem like there's a lot of emotion tied up in the relationships that you have with these companies that were built through Vercel.
Yeah.
That you may not fully trust that the motivation is like there are myriad other reasons why that company would be interested in something you were building that aren't necessarily because the product is good and it solves a problem that they want to pay money for.
Yeah, and also just the being cautious of like double dip is the wrong phrase here. I'm kind of looking for, even though I'm serving a segment that is very close to Vercel, I kind of want a strong segmentation between Vercel and this project, right? I don't want the walls to be blurred between them, because this is definitely my project. There are things I've learned at the day job that I'm taking into it, but I guess, yeah, I guess just the segmentation there matters, because I want to feel good about, if, say someday I have to go into court and answer, did I use any of my Vercel resources to complete this project, and is this project my IP? I would like to say yes, it is my IP. And so the caution here comes out of two places. One's maybe emotional, but the other might be like actually legal. Now, is this me rationalizing something, using something that I know to kind of decide I don't want to do the thing that I just put up an emotional wall around? Maybe. But also it sounds kind of reasonable, right? And
That may
this is
that
why.
may well be the reason. That may well be what got you to saying it. But I think it is also it's a legitimate concern.
Yeah.
And even, I mean, there are cases where there are stories where things like that have happened, and then even though the person hasn't used any of the resources from their company, the fact that they were doing it, on work time or even while they were employed there, like it can cause some messy situations in the future.
Yeah.
So it is a valid thing to be thinking about. Is this entirely separate? Am I confident that it's gonna, like, whether it's taking people from Slack Connect or not? Like, you do want to make sure that it is seen practically legally as your own separate thing. That's
Yeah.
valid. It
I do
shouldn't
think
stop you from making any progress, but it's something to make sure of.
I do think though, Vercel has kind of proven to be a very okay spot for side projects. If you go look at the DevRel people at Vercel, they're all launching a million things of their own projects that and things like that. So I think my concern there is slightly unfounded, because there's plenty of examples of people at Vercel doing similar things and being 100% fine and getting retweeted
I mean, the
by
easiest
all
thing
the
to do
different
is,
employees.
like, if you're confident that your boss will be fine with it, you get them to write something to confirm that they're fine with the side project, and then you never have to,
There you go.
So yeah, I don't think the concern is invalid. I think if you let it stop you from ever making any progress on this thing, that might be unfounded. But
That's fair.
But
Okay.
yeah, that's
Do the paperwork is what I'm hearing, which makes sense. I'll see my boss Tuesday. I'll ask him about it.
in terms of the, like, what you said about not being sure how you feel about tapping into those relationships that you've got while you're at your day job. That I think that's very fair, and I think it sounds like you've worked your way towards a possible alternative that you might feel more comfortable with. You might find that there are some exceptions as well. There could be some people who, yes, you interact with them through work, but actually you have such a close personal relationship with them that that if you sat down with them and said, "Look, I'm working on this side project,"
Yeah.
you might feel very comfortable in that dynamic, that they won't feel pressured to do it because of work,
Yeah.
things getting in the way. So that might be something that you just feel out on a case by case basis. There might be some people who you think are cool to do this with, and some people where you'd rather not, and you'd rather go for anonymous people. So
Yeah, I like the approach of probably mixing the two, because there are some people where on the list of 12, there are a couple companies where I actually know these people from MicroConf, and they just happen to work at this other company, and it's more a happenstance thing rather than like this is how I met you thing. So like I feel better about that connection than I do a different company where it's like we hopped on a bunch of sales calls together, and you were representing company A and I was representing company B, and now I know you via that. So those are, I guess, bucketing them into those distinctions might be useful.
cool. So what's stopping you?
Is the goal here for me to just say nothing? Because I feel like that could be the punchline of the podcast is just getting a bunch of people to say nothing. But that kind of feels like my actual answer is nothing. I think I'm probably going to need to write all these things down, but thankfully this is recorded, so I can summarize it using. Well, first I'll throw it into Whisper. Then I'll throw it into Chat GPT and get my action items from the transcript.
I'm reminded of Mark Andreessen of Andreessen Horowitz has a quote that in the future there will be two types of people who tell computers what to do and people who are told by computers what to do. You're effectively getting a computer to tell you what to do.
Yeah, I'm telling a computer to tell me what to do.
Yeah. There's one other angle of this that I'm curious to explore. You mentioned that there's a dozen projects in this project graveyard that you've taken from idea to domain name to MVP, and then it died. Mm-hmm. Why did they die?
These are good questions. I've kind of been
That's the thing I wrote on my paper to ask about.
Nice.
Yeah.
Different ones for different reasons. I've kind of been evolving this segment I want to serve. I've been thinking about this as like, at first I would just come up with like, what do I think good ideas for products are? And it's those kind of tend to start out in consumerish space. They slowly moved into like prosumer space. This is the first like fully B2B thing I've built. And I really I don't think scratching your own itch in the B2C space is a good idea. And I've done that plenty of times, and it's failed quite a few. So I guess project selection is probably the number one reason a lot of my projects had failed. The other reason is motivation, right? Like, I think I very much agree that like a startup dies when the founder runs out of energy, not out of money. And although a bunch of companies not able to raise rounds over the next couple months will disagree with that sentence. But that definitely holds true for my side projects. When I've picked things where I wasn't passionate about the audience, passionate about the customer, things like that, I've had a hard time like sticking with those projects. I've kind of been building up my skill set over the course of all of these different tools, right? I've built plenty of things. My first one, I didn't even know how to collect payment. Like, had no clue how to do. I was mostly a front-end dev to start. And so I didn't even know how to like get an API key for Stripe and do some of these things. I also always had like DevOps done for me at my jobs. So I didn't ever have the experience of like creating a new CI/CD pipeline and getting things deployed and getting like a cert and all these other things. And a slight plug for Vercel here. Actually, one of the reasons I joined the company is like Vercel is the tool that let me become kind of capable of shipping full products because it's a lot easier to ship a backend and ship things that scale, and you don't have to worry about like serverless is just, it's so nice and it's easy serverless. So that's kind of, I've just been building up my toolkit or tool belt Rob Walling says, yeah, you're building up. He's got the like stair step methodology, right?
Mm-hmm.
And each stair step you're supposed to be building more tools in the tool belt and getting better at things. Strangely, all of my projects have failed and not made revenue, but I have learned quite a few things. And I guess failure is a relative term, right? I sold one of my projects recently that I was thinking about shutting down for a small sum of money. So I guess that's not a failure. I just kind of stopped supporting it though. But yeah, I learned things. I learned the customers I want to serve via those iterations. And I've landed on kind of selling to companies like Vercel, which is a dev tool company. That's kind of the space I want to continue to serve because I think it's going to continue to grow. I also think that there's not a ton of companies out there that are niching into that specific segment, and I've got a lot of knowledge there.
Okay, let me try to summarize and see if I understand. It sounds like there are three main reasons why you characterize that your graveyard of a dozen projects have failed. The first is building something for B2C, scratching your own itch as a consumer, is not a way to get high-paying customers. That's a way to attract tinkerers, and that's not a great foundation for a business. The second is loss of motivation. That I don't think I fully understand that. What helps you feel motivated when working on a project, and what's happening when that motivation goes away?
Yeah, so one project I made that I kind of just stopped was a tool for doing remote all hands software. And like that was a tool that, yes, served a business, but B, like I just didn't really care about HR type software or like company engagement software, like whatever you want to call that space. It's just something I didn't care about. It was a great idea. I was working on it before COVID. It probably would have made a bunch of money if I had it live before everyone was forced into remote. But I just stopped building it because I wasn't passionate in that space, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And like I could have pushed through on that, but life's short. Why build software you don't want to?
So you started the idea because you were passionate about something about it.
I started the idea because my company adopted remote for the first time, and I was like, this remote all hands sucks. Just watching an all hands presentation over Teams and then throwing questions into chat and praying that the live production crew sees them and like answers them it's horrible.
Yes. But then the motivation evaporated because you realized you didn't actually care about the...
Yeah, like it was a good problem, but I wasn't passionate about fixing it. I just saw a good problem that businesses would pay for, which, is good. Like that's a good skill to have of identifying those things. But I think I've just over time become more aware of things I will and will not follow through on. I kind of know myself better in that sense. And so I've slowly but surely whittled down that range of products that I want to work on.
Okay. It sounds almost like a joke to me to say that working on a sales tool for like dev tool sales pipelines fixes that like passion thing. That sounds like a very like boring corporate project.
That is the beauty of it, is it's so boring no one else is going to be interested in it but me.
Okay.
And it's also something like, so when I was interviewing at companies, Vercel was top of my list. It was the company I wanted to work at most. So I don't see myself leaving Vercel anytime soon, and this is something that will definitely make my job better at Vercel if I can use it in the day job. So I've kind of also got that forced, like I'm not going anywhere. Plus, this tool makes my day job better, so there's a little more fit there, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah, and the fact that you're living and breathing this problem day to day, that does track for me that this is a problem space that you're thinking a lot about. This is I would also feel passionate about building a thing that would save me personally a bunch of time in the day.
Yeah, if you've seen all the emails I had to send back and forth, you would understand why I'm passionate about this space.
For sure, for sure. Shah, what are your thoughts here and the reasons that the previous projects have failed?
Yeah, I think I can relate to a lot of it. It's the first thing, and I think there is something to be said for like those spaces where you are passionate. And I understand what you're saying about like you can be passionate about the day-to-day work of the initial stages of building something, whilst not being passionate about the wider problem space that you're solving. Like I hear that you can be very motivated and passionate about doing that initial work, even if you don't care about the end goal that it's serving. And if you can get those in alignment and be passionate about both, then that's awesome. I'm also the thing that's kind of front of mind in my head as you say this stuff is this idea that motivation that we have it kind of the wrong way around when we talk about motivation being the cause of action, that more often it's the other way around.
Yeah.
That like it's cyclical, but it can be more useful to look at it the other way around. Like the action causes motivation. You might not be motivated, but then you sit down and you grind and you do the thing anyway.
Yeah.
And that causes things to become exciting again. So it's also, that's a trap that I think a lot of...
I agree with that, actually. What we've probably through this conversation just witnessed, actually, is just that I've grown up a lot over the last 5 years. Like, I used to much more fall into the camp of like, if I'm not motivated to work on this, then I won't. And things like that. But the change, I think, like some folks at YC talk about this, like they actually see founders become more passionate about their business as it's successful. Like they start out and they're like kind of passionate about it, but because it works, then they become passionate about the space. There's a good video they just put out on their YouTube channel about like picking a problem to work on. And I think for me, it's much more that I think I've learned that, yes, you're 100% right. Taking action kind of does generate the motivation. I have a much better productivity routine now than I did when all of those projects failed. Even though I'm busier, I somehow get more done. So 100% agree on like what I've been doing recently is, wake up at 6 a.m., go to the gym for 30 minutes, come back and code for 2 hours every morning on this project. And that itself has kept me motivated in making progress on this, even when I don't have a ton of time to work on it, I don't have any customers yet, things like that. So
yeah,
very much agree that action gives you energy.
Yeah, and that, like what you're saying there about kind of, if you've kind of, it sounds like you've shifted perspective a little bit to like your marker of success and feeling like fulfilled in what you're doing is I've gone and done this action. Like I've got up, I've gone to the gym, and I've sat down and coded, rather than it being tied to the external, out of your control. Like, this needs to make X amount of money for me to feel. Like it's focusing on those intrinsic motivations and actions is I think is the way forward. And then I think like within that, it's important to draw that line and like make sure that you don't have any of your like that sense of those previous ones that didn't work out that those don't play into any kind of like identity, self-image of, oh, I build things that aren't successful. It's like drawing that line in the sand and saying, you know
Yeah.
what? I've learned from those things, and those ones didn't make tons of money, but this is the new one, and this is, you know, this is the first one that I'm ever doing with all the knowledge and skills and everything that I've learned from the past.
Yeah, this is the first one I've built. Well, the last one I worked on, Trislater, that was the first one I built where I felt I actually had enough knowledge to build a full SaaS, like a full multi-tenant, scalable, payments work, everything works. Like that was the first time I kind of took a stab and felt like I built a really good product here that works. And so in terms of all the like other 12, yeah, I don't really put them in the same bucket of failures because like, you know, I was just learning how to deploy a website. Like my first one I built was share-a-podcast.com. First of all, don't put dashes in your domain names. Pay for better domain names. And like I didn't even know how to like build a backend and connect to a database for my front end website then. So like, is that a failure or is that like me playing with new tech and learning it? I'm not going to put it in the bucket of a failure because I actually figured out how to deploy something. And I think it might have been the first time I used Vercel back when it was called Zeit. So,
oh, I remember that.
Yeah, like I think a lot of these things, at least for me, the fact it led me to even getting a job I really enjoy is, we talked about the money piece of it too. It's like, I actually don't. At previous jobs, my goal was how quickly can I make this thing make money so I can quit my job. At Vercel, I very much enjoy my job and I'm not going anywhere. And so that motivation has gone away. So now I kind of have removed I don't want to call the money thing like, it's not an impure source of motivation, but it can be one that distorts your view a little bit. Like money can, if you need money and you want to leave your job, I think you'll tend to, at least I'll stop projecting here and talk about myself. I tended to work on things I thought could make me money more quickly. Because I was like, hey, if I can get to 10K MRR, then I can quit, or whatever that number is, right? But now, since that's not on the table, I'm actually working on a bigger project that I think can have more impact that will be more useful. Anyway, just food for thought for people who feel like, you know, if you do want to quit your job too badly, you might accidentally look for shortcuts. So maybe don't look for shortcuts is my advice to the audience here.
I like this framing that the place where you're at now, having walked on these stair steps, this is the third thing I was going to bring up. You are more capable as a founder. You're more capable in building things. This last project you work on, Trislater, was the first thing that you built that was deployed, that had the DevOps thing figured out, that had the billing thing figured out. And you're now shifting towards more of a B2B mindset. You figured out things from a business perspective. So building registered.dev has the highest probability of being, I don't like using the word successful. I think Shai had a good point there of changing that framing to profitable. Yeah, a profitable project. So yeah, this sounds like you have a high probability of getting to this place, certainly in the next decade. I think you said was your goal of shifting towards having a product be the main source of your income. I'd like to bring us home a little bit. How are you feeling about this project, and what do you currently see as your next steps?
Oh, okay. Can I do a bring you home because it's going to lead well into that?
Yes, of course.
I wanted to I know you said that you wanted to recap to like build out your action items moving forward by taking this transcript and putting it in ChatGPT, but I would like to encourage. I'd love to see just a brief summary yourself of like what are your takeaways of immediate next actions from this.
So immediate next actions, I think I'm going to try to find 12 more customers that I am interested in kind of this early feedback stage. So if I frame the 12 that I already had lined up as the 12 that, I want to have a good first impression of the product and yada yada, because I think they're the most likely to close, then I'll just go find 12 more that look kind of like them but are different, that I don't have those like feelings about protecting those relationships. So I'll just go find 12 more of those, and then send them some cold email, or a LinkedIn connection. Or I actually think the nice part about selling to dev tool companies is all of these people are on Twitter. So I will probably just find them on Twitter and DM them on Twitter, because that's going to work way better than a LinkedIn DM. And that's kind of the phase for getting feedback on. I'm not going to wait until I have something fully kind of finished. I think I'm just going to go have those conversations. And I'll reach out to 12, probably expect a 20% yes rate. So I'll only have a couple conversations, but it's better than none. And then I'll get kind of just, I'll probably go steal the deploy empathy scripts and just kind of do those conversations with that bucket of 12. If it confirms what I'm building, then I'm probably just going to go full speed ahead on building, and getting to that demo state where then I can reach out to those other 12 customers. There's probably another bucket of like, how do I want to start thinking about the CRM stuff and integrating with it, but that's a problem for tomorrow. Or not tomorrow, but future Drew. He'll figure that out.
Yep. Okay, so that next step of finding those 12 and reaching out to them, how long is that going to take you? Like, waiting to hear back from them is different, but like the action that you can take, how quickly can you do that?
I mean, I could probably find 12 today and send those messages. So I was planning on coding more today, but maybe I'm doing cold outreach instead.
Maybe or definitely, because it's already today.
It's already today.
Right,
okay, so I'm doing cold outreach today. You're gonna have to make
this decision.
Yes, I'm doing cold outreach today. That's the takeaway.
Okay. To 12 people by the end of today?
Yeah, it's very doable.
Okay, wonderful.
For the listeners who may be confused by the timeline, we're currently recording this today.
Yeah, this is today.
Today's the day.
Today is the day.
Okay, and so now, with that in mind, do you want to circle back to Christian's question, which I believe was, how are you feeling about this action list moving forward?
Fairly good. I think it's rather straightforward. I think yeah, because I think the only thing that I'm like, getting all these, spending all this time on conversation is a waste of time when I could be coding and making progress on the code. But I think that's the developer's intuition, right? That's like good time is coding time and all other time is wasted. But I know that's not correct. Like, I work in sales now. So I understand how much work can happen that is not coding. But yeah, I guess there's no but. That's the point of this podcast, is to remove the qualifying but statement from whatever your blocker is, right? If you are indeed blocked, remove the qualification and just let the sentence stand on its own. So I guess there is no but.
Yeah, and I guess, I mean, look, there can be a but of like, but that feels kind of scary.
Oh, that's fair. But I think the problem space I'm working on is one that I'm very interested in, and I don't plan on changing the problem space for quite a while. If this product doesn't work, I will build another product in the same space. So until I solve problems from this set of customers and they're willing to trade me money for solving those problems, I'm kind of not done with. So any work I do in that direction is useful. So I think I guess even if it is scary, what I'm saying is there's no escaping it. Like I've decided this is what I'm doing.
Yeah, and I mean that's the thing with this is the typical. I love how you framed it just now as that developer's intuition that the best thing to be doing is coding. That's such a nice diplomatic way of saying we're really scared of marketing. But
yes. Marketing, sales, the sales engineering. I took this job for a couple of reasons. One was to the like, who wouldn't take a job at Vercel? Vercel's amazing. I love working here. It's such a great company. It's amazing to like see the future of what's being built on the internet before it's built. I can randomly, DM the person who made the decision on why React Server Components works the way it does, rather than just like reading some blog post on a forum or something. But the other reason was I really wanted to like learn the rest of the business, learn sales, get comfortable on sales calls. I remember 2 jobs ago, we used to do demos where like we'd make a feature and then you'd have to like demo it to the rest of the engineering team. And after your sprint was over. And I remember getting like really nervous for those. And now I can go, I can do lunch and learns for big companies that that I can't name, and do a lunch and learn for 150 of their engineers and be fine. So that's the other reason of like why I took this job. I knew that if I wanted to kind of jump into the founder space, just cranking code out every day is not the best way to do it.
That feels reassuring to me that even with this base of this professional experience at your day job, demoing and doing sales calls, you're in a sales role. There can still be some emotional resistance to doing marketing for your own thing.
Oh,
like
yes.
getting people
Yes.
on the phone to show them something that you've made can still have that emotional resistance. Yeah.
Yeah, emphatically yes. Vercel is while it is an amazing company and everything, it's not my product. It's not me. And I think with our startups, we tend to like wrap some self-identity in them, right? Like this is my thing. If they say no, are they saying no to me? Or are they saying no to the product? And so there's these two things kind of naturally get conflated when it's the thing you've built. But when there's a bug with Vercel, like I just go create a ticket in a backlog somewhere and it's not personal. So yeah, I think the resistance will always kind of be there, even if you are in a sales call and or in a sales-based role. And I mean, I feel no shame talking about Vercel's features at large and getting pushback from architects and principal engineers I'm having a hard time not saying companies here because I probably shouldn't be, but very, very large companies, Fortune 10, and getting pushback about like, hey, well, we can't deploy with you because X, Y, Z. So I'm fine in that whole domain, and yet I still don't want to go ask for feedback about my little side project from
feedback can
somebody.
be personal. If someone criticizes the product, that's your idea. It's the thing that you've built. But something I've only recently unpacked is how incredibly sensitive to rejection I am and criticism. And so something as simple as doing customer support emails for File Inbox was this minefield of people saying that I'm bad. And I think, therefore, it was the logic I was following, because I'm bad, I'm unworthy of love and unlovable, and like all this stuff that got tied into it. And being able to be aware of that and realize what was happening has helped me to be able to find effective ways to manage it, which has been very helpful.
Yeah, I think there's two ways people can go about learning things. I've started working on a blog post for like why people might want to consider sales engineering. And way one of learning is like go find a job that teaches you the things you want to learn so that you can build up this skill set and then take it and go on your founder journey and look, you've got the tools, you're hopefully more equipped to handle this. But option two is people just, kind of jump into the fire of running a startup. They don't go like build all of the skill sets they think they need. They kind of just, it's trial by fire, jump into the deep end, add all the metaphors in here you want. And I think both work. But the thing about the skill set I've been building at Vercel is it's very much companies post product market fit. Like Vercel has product market fit. And so while I am learning a bunch of sales skills and things like that, I think they translate nicely to like if you have product market fit. My skill set in the like companies that don't have product market fit space is still very it's still very new territory for me. Like, yes, all of my products haven't probably had product market fit, but the iterative process to get to product market fit, like I'm just kind of inching along that continuum.
Shai, do you have any closing thoughts for our first episode of What's Stopping You?
The one thing I wanted to add is like I think a lot of the things that we've talked about here, the like losing motivation for things, the just all sorts of things that have come up today, I think a lot of them get solved by taking this next step that you're talking about, which is to involve other people, to like bring in those potential customers, do a bit of research, find out if this is what they would want or what problems they have. I think that next step just solves so much of this, and it's an incredibly scary or intimidating step to take in a lot of ways, because the space that you're in right now, the position you're in right now of I have these dozen people who in the future I could speak with, like that's a very comfortable place to be. You know that you have that in the future, and to then go and actually speak to those, you're destroying that safety net that you have of like, that you'll always have that to look forward to, or to do when you're ready. So, yeah, I think this is a very good step for you to be taking, and I look forward to seeing whether it gets done today or whether any new resistance comes up, which would also be totally legit, and I'd be interested to hear that. But yeah, I think this is a good path forward, just in so many ways.
I think the takeaway is burn the boats. Just gotta burn the boats. Like, if I think there's a lot of, if you were to look back at all my previous projects, and I know we were doing takeaways and wrap ups, so apologize for ruining it, but I probably didn't burn the boats on any of my previous side projects. I probably didn't go all in on any of them. Maybe you could say Try Slater I did, but that's debatable. I didn't even ask anybody in my network for feedback before pushing a V1 live. So, yeah, burn the boats. That's my takeaway.
I'm going to push a little bit on that, because you're still burn the boats for me would be like, quit your day job. And
burn the boats on the emotional, like.
Don't be afraid of the lead walking away if they're not interested in the product as it currently exists.
Yeah.
Okay. Don't be afraid of the boats catching on fire if they happen to catch on fire.
Yeah. If the boats happen to catch on fire, don't intentionally set them on fire, but if they catch on fire, it's fine.
I like that.
Okay. It's not a big deal.
The building a little bit off of what Shai said, that general problem of the fear of converting potential into realized output is consistently terrifying for me in my life. That's something I unpacked recently. it's a very comfortable position to be sitting in. Well, this thing might happen in the future, and I have,
Mm-hmm.
all I have to do is send out an email to this email list, and then something cool will happen.
Then the good things happen.
Right, and that's a very scary first step to take. Of this is the test of if that's actually going to happen. So that's a good fear to be conscious of. Drew, thank you so much for being the very first guest on What's Stopping You. This has been a ton of fun. I'm glad that sounds like you know what your next step is. Sounds like the answer to what's stopping you right now is nothing, and I'm excited to find out what the next thing that's stopping you might be. Should we do like where to follow you, or I don't know what to do at the end of the episode. What do you guys think?
I thought you were going to propose singing like a little jingle. I was so excited.
We could sing a song.
Yeah, where
There's
can people find
nothing
out more about you,
stopping
Drew?
you.
I guess just drew.tech is probably the best place to find me on the internet, or on Twitter. You can always find me on Twitter. But those are probably the big ones. And then I guess if you're a DevTool person, please send me an email at hey@drew.tech, especially if you're in the sales side of a DevTool company.
Sounds good. That's the end. Goodbye, everyone. Drew, if you know anyone who you think would benefit from having a conversation with Shai and I, talking about what's stopping them, or if there's any listener who would like to go through the same sort of thing that Drew did, either on or off the record, we have an option. If you would like a conversation not turned into a podcast, you can either go to whatstoppingyou.fm, or you can private message Shai or me on Twitter, and we'll have links for those in the bio. Thank you very much, and see you in the next episode.
Goodbye.
But hold on one second, because I might cut this part out later, but I also want to get a little meta. Drew, what did you think of this format? This is our very first one. What were
Why am I out of focus here? So I like the format. I think there's going to be a trend of you talking to people, and then you ask the question, what's stopping you? I think a lot of people will eventually realize the answer should be nothing. So I think you could maybe, getting people to say nothing is almost the game. If that you're like chasing after. Let's think. I
also don't want to push that too hard, because I think Shai brought up a few times that like when I say nothing is stopping me, sometimes there's still some emotion underlying that. If nothing is truly stopping me, I would have already done it.
Right.
And the interesting part of these sorts of conversations for me, and when Shai and I have these kinds of conversations with each other, is like figuring out what, it's very frequently for me an emotion that I'm ashamed of vocalizing that I'm feeling.
Yeah.
So getting to that point in conversations is, I think, both of our goals.
I think it would probably be tricky to get to like what is the actual emotion for a lot of times. If therapy sessions could get there in a 1 hour and 20-minute thing for most people, then like therapy would be much more popular, and like I think it actually probably takes a couple sessions to get to like, if my core thing that's stopping me is fear of rejection, and it's got something to do with some childhood trauma, a therapist would take like a couple years to maybe get there,
right?
Or at least a couple weeks. And so getting there in a podcast format might be tricky. But I think you can at least get to like, you might not get to the root of, why this person has a fear of rejection, but you can probably identify the fear of rejection, and then
that I think that's the game. Is like you just have to get to enough of it for someone to be able to take that next step.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's not like it's not to completely identify it, figure out the root cause, solve it in its entirety.
Well, in 5th grade,
You're right. But often, like, just the fact of recognizing that it's there, because like we don't, we stay behind this comfort blanket of like, oh, it's just because it's the holidays, so I can't reach out to people. Like that's your very surface level one. Once you peel that back one step to be like, oh, it's that I feel like I'm burning those boats, or that you just need to get one level deeper
mm-hmm.
to be able to label that there was something stopping you.
Yeah.
in order, and you don't then have to solve it. Like you can't really
Right.
solve it. You just recognize that it's there, but you've
And then
broken
you
it down
do,
into small
yeah.
enough pieces that you can take a bit of action anyway.
It's the business coaching side of therapy, where you just get to whatever the thing stopping you is, and then take the next step, actually dealing with whatever those feelings are as for a licensed professional. Okay, I like that approach. That makes sense to me.
There's the clip. That's that's the explanation of what this podcast is right there.
Yeah,
That's good.
we'll get you unblocked, and then take those findings to your therapy session. Yeah, I like that. Any other? I don't think I have any other feedback. At least not yet. I'll think about it a little bit and see if I can come up with anything.
Cool.
Thank
you for being the first guest.
Yeah,
Just
happy
a
to
lot of
be a
fun.
guinea pig. We'll see if my just being very vulnerable on the internet goes well.
Yes. I think the only
I
bit
think
that
I think if nothing else, like you're gonna learn something, you know.
Yeah.
And that's the same. That was the same takeaway as you were saying about all your graveyard of projects. Like, is it really a failure if you learn something from it to take to the next thing? So, you know, whatever happens here, I think you will end up in a better place.
Yeah, I
Than before.
agree 100%. My graveyard of projects got me, the job that I wanted. So good enough, I suppose. And but I think like I'll always be tinkering on something. Like I think the question could more easily be answered earlier. You said like, why the compulsion to build something? I think even if I became insanely rich, I would still work on projects and try to ship things. I think they'd probably just be slightly more ambitious. And so this is my stab at a slightly more ambitious project. It's like imposter syndrome. Everybody says that, like, in tech, such a popular term is like imposter syndrome. I think everybody thinks all these different people have it figured out, but by the time you talk to 200 of them, you're like, oh, okay, none of them know. Like,
Well, it's the same thing people say about like that moment when you realize that your parents don't know anything either. You grow up
same
thinking
thing,
that they have everything figured out, and then you realize they're grown ups and like but they have they're as clueless as everyone else.
these big companies launch products that nobody actually wants. And it's just like bigger failures. That's reassuring to hear that it's the same sorts of problems. It's just scaled up. And then you at a bigger scale, you encounter more problems of a different type of the bureaucracy of the nodes talking to each other and being held back and not being able to move fast enough. Yeah.
And it's literally, we cannot answer the question of, is this going to be a good solution for other people? Like, you can't answer that in a vacuum. It's the same thing. I once saw a great interview with a stand-up comedian, and he was being asked about like his first shows and did they go badly, and he was like, of course they did, because one thing that's quite unique about stand-up comedy is you actually can't practice it by yourself.
Yeah, you have to get on stage.
Success is an exact is a product of, do the other people laugh when I say these things? And so you can't, to an extent, you can practice playing the piano at home and you can know that you've got pretty good, and then you can do it in front of other people. And with stand-up comedy, you cannot. And so it forces you to. That's how you get good.
Same with YouTube videos and podcasts, and everyone talks about, what is the gap that the NPR person taste.
Ira Glass's.
Yes,
the gap.
Yeah, the gap between your taste and what you can make. I think in the beginning, I listened to tons of podcasts, so I know what good podcasts sound like. So if I were to ever make a podcast, I would be very frustrated because I couldn't, get over the gap. But the way to get over the gap is just do the thing.
That had me paralyzed for 6 years because I had in my head this idea of a perfect podcast that I was going to make, and it took 6 years. And then I had a stupid idea for a stupid podcast, and I was like, "Let me just do this and see what happens." And it was terrible, and it broke me through that. And I realized it wasn't as scary as I thought it was going to be. And my podcasts are still shit compared to my taste, but we're slowly creeping there. And I've got several hundred episodes under my belt now of stuff that's out there in the world.
That's nice.
That's interesting. So there's a couple of things there. Firstly, like it's even making YouTube videos. Like you could make it's like you could make one and you can see that it's bad, but you can still compare it to your taste, and you can make more and get better probably without uploading them. It wouldn't be the quickest way to progress.
Yeah.
But you could progress you could get good at making videos without sharing them, just slower. Comedy, I'm not sure you could even do that. But,
what's his name? Ali Abdal?
Yeah.
Is that his name? I think he proposes that, like, just make 2 videos a week, or 2 videos. Is it 2 videos a week for a whole year?
I think it's a video a week for 2 years.
Unless video a week for 2 years, and then, oh, sorry, I've got to pause for 1 second. There's someone knocking on my door. I will be right back.
I know what he's about to say. How was that for you?
You know what's interesting about? I like that a lot. You know what's interesting about what you were saying there about your taste in podcasts and listening to a lot of them? I have barely ever listened to a podcast episode. Maybe that's what made this easier to go and do. Yeah, I think I have been on. I was just saying, Drew. I've in terms of taste when listening to podcasts, I have barely ever listened to a podcast. In fact, I think I've probably guested on more than I've listened to, and both of those will be less than 20, maybe even less than 10.
I imagine there are very few people in the world that can say that they've been on more podcasts than they've listened to.
Yeah, that's
interesting. I'm a unique guy. I was also, I think, I must be one of the only people. It's not true anymore, but for a while, I had visited the cities of Minneapolis and Atlanta, but never transited through their airports. And I think I must have been one of the only people in the world who could say that.
Yeah, those are popular airports. Drew, I think
because
we're talking about
goes to those places.
Ali Abdal's,
and everyone transits through them.
Ali Abdal's advice of 2 videos a week, or a video a week for 2 years.
A week. Yeah, and I think he says too that in the beginning of that, like, you don't actually need to upload them, like. So I think the point you were making about getting better is true. I also, while we're off the record here, have a theory that Ali Abdal is your secret customer for what used to be Clipstop Marketing. Is that true, Christian?
The video clipper. He may quickly turn into one. Well, actually, no, because he I think has grown outside of the. I think people will outgrow the video clipper once they have a production staff of people who are like editing their videos, because you can make a much higher quality product if you have a dedicated video editor. And so he has a team of something like 20 people. I think 3 or 4 of which are editors. So and he already has a person who does this for him.
I noticed you were using him in a lot of the test clips, and then you had a person on the podcast. You said you could not name them, and then it leaked that it was a he.
Yes.
And then my theory is that person you were talking about was him.
That's a good theory. I was talking either.
Oh, okay. Those would both be good.
Yeah.
Ah, okay. So my guess was wrong. Okay. I was.
It's a good guess.
Driving in the car, listening to that, and I was like, who could it be?
Yeah.
Cool. I need to go eat some food.
Yep.
Yeah, same here.
And Drew needs to go and send some.
I got some Twitter
outreach
DMs to send.
messages. Yeah.
That's right. Drew, have fun. Let us know how it goes. Oh, I'm going to record a little outro here. Drew, if you know anyone who you think would benefit from having a conversation with Shai and I, talking about what's stopping them, or if there's any listener who would like to go through the same sort of thing that Drew did, either on or off the record, we have an option if you would like a conversation not turned into a podcast. You can either go to whatstoppingyou.fm, or you can private message Shai or me on Twitter, and we'll have links for those in the bio. Thank you very much, and see you in the next episode.